When the Great Snowy Mountain scheme was finally completed in 1974, almost no one had even heard of global warming. But back then, emission-free renewable energy from falling water provided 20% of Australia's electricity. 30 years later, with climate change a looming reality, hydro's share has fallen to 7%. And despite 5 years of growth, wind power contributes less than 1%. Yet the federal government won't increase Australia's renewable energy target. Both government and opposition are obsessed with coal.
A key focus of our whole energy and greenhouse policy is ensuring that we have the means to clean up coal.
If we're serious about climate change, we've got to be serious about clean coal.
But clean coal is at least a decade and a half away, and no one knows what it will cost. Meanwhile, Australia's greenhouse emissions from electricity generation are soaring. Across the Pacific in the state of California, they're focusing on wind and sun and steam from deep beneath the earth.
California has taken the leadership in moving the entire country beyond debate and denial to action.
33% renewable energy by 2020 is a very ambitious target, but we need to meet it.
Tonight on Four Corners, if California is the place the future happens first, is Australia in danger of being left behind?
Most industrial advantage in the world comes through innovation. And if Australia stays with coal power, they won't have that.
For at least 5 years, the Howard government has repeated a mantra. Renewable energy is all very well, but it can't provide an answer to Australia's clean energy needs.
You cannot run a modern economy on wind farms and solar panels. It's a pity that you can't, but you can't.
The great city of Los Angeles, its industries and its spreading suburbs are powered overwhelmingly by a single utility, Southern California Edison. From its grid control center in Alhambra, SCE manages almost 30,000 megawatts of electricity, more than half of Australia's entire capacity. By law, in 3 years' time, 1/5 of that power will have to come from renewable energy. And that doesn't include the 28% that already comes from major hydro schemes and nuclear power.
We just signed this very large contract for 1,500 megawatt wind development project. We have a large contract for at least 500 megawatts of a very innovative solar technology. We have contracts for geothermal and biomass and small hydro. And importantly, those long-term contracts then allow players to go to the banks to get financing to get these new projects built.
In the Californian state capital, Sacramento, Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger has teamed up with the Democrat-dominated state legislature to set some of the most ambitious emissions reduction and renewable energy targets in the world.
We are not waiting for politics. We are not waiting for problems to get worse. We are not waiting for the federal government. We are not waiting, period, because the future does not wait.
The Howard government, too, has a renewable energy target. It's resulted in a mushrooming of wind turbines along the shores of the Southern Ocean, where the Australian wind blows hardest. The Mandatory Renewable Energy Target, or MRET for short, was first announced by the new Howard government back in 1997, as it prepared for the climate change conference in Kyoto. But compared to California's, its goals were modest.
The government will work with the states and territories to set a mandatory target for electricity retailers to source an additional 2% of their electricity from renewable energy sources by the year 2010.
The MRET scheme awarded a tradable certificate, originally worth around $40, for every megawatt hour of new renewable electricity. Effectively, it more than doubled the market price for renewable energy. The scheme favoured the cheapest renewable technology, and that turned out to be wind power.
We have seen a massive expansion in the wind industry as a result of that. We've seen $3 billion invested in the industry, and we've seen a 80-fold increase in the amount of energy produced from wind as a result of that scheme so far, and they're still putting up wind farms. In fact, the only complaint I get about the MRET is that it's too successful, that in fact will reach its target ahead of schedule.
The target was set at 9,500 gigawatt hours of renewable energy by 2010, and it will be comfortably reached. But that won't achieve the Prime Minister's stated goal of increasing renewables' share of electricity generation by 2%. Quite the reverse.
The proportion of renewable energy has declined in overall sort of national terms. At this stage, by about 2%. Renewable energy currently generates about 8%. We're generating more electricity than we were in 2001, but we're a smaller proportion of the national market.
In the past decade, Australia's economy has grown much faster than the planners anticipated. And even as generation from renewables increased, generation from traditional fossil fuels has grown faster. In 2003, a formal review of the MRET scheme, chaired by Senator Grant Tambling, recommended that it be extended by 10 years and the target more than doubled.
San Antonio,
the government
Texas.
refused to do either.
The Lone Star
In its
State's
eyes,
second
reducing
largest
greenhouse
city,
gas
the
emissions is a
population
secondary
of
goal. The main purpose of MRET was to foster innovative Australian industries, and wind power doesn't qualify.
We just saw towers being erected and turbines being brought in from Europe. No R&D being done here of any great consequence. Some manufacture of blades and some assembly, not manufacture, but some assembly of turbines being done here. But the vast majority of the big turbines are being brought in from overseas, stuck on top of towers. That technology is proven.
To the wind farm entrepreneurs, it seemed a curious argument. 70% of the cost of the average wind farm is spent in Australia. Blades and towers are made here. Only the turbines themselves are imported.
We would like to import less, but it's about getting the lowest cost renewable to market, and we do that by sourcing the lowest cost equipment, which currently comes out of Denmark. No different to any other electricity generating technology, be it coal or be it gas.
What do you mean no different? I mean, the coal is Australian.
The equipment comes from overseas.
Just down the road from Codrington Wind Farm is the town of Portland, home to Alcoa's giant aluminium smelter, and to a modest engineering company, Keppel Prince. Keppel Prince's founder, Steve Garner, set up the company to do subcontracting work for the smelter. But in 2001, he seized his chance and began to win contracts to manufacture the giant towers that house wind turbines. The wind business has provided good jobs for more than 100 workers at Keppel Prince and a couple of hundred more elsewhere in Portland. But like the wind, says Steve Garner, it's business that comes and goes as policies shift and change.
It hasn't been steady. It's been a real roller coaster, and that's caused a lot of grief for us, but we've now completed some 7 or 8 projects, wind farms throughout Australia.
By last year, it was clear the government's renewable target would soon be reached.